Okay guys, welcome, and today we're going to compare the Fujifilm XF 18 to 55 versus the Fujifilm XF 16 to 55 zoom lenses. So we're going to see if we're going to keep both lenses or if we're going to sell one of the lenses. Not sure if we're going to actually make a conclusion, but we're going to attempt to at least make some comparisons to get us started to see which one we want to keep. So with that said, let's begin. So the first thing I'm going to do, I just want to show you a difference between 16 versus 18 millimeters because some people will really want that wide angle of the 16. Some people might not miss it. So that's the first thing I'm going to show you. We're going to toggle back and forth. Let's see. Okay, so there's the 16 millimeter. Let's pull it up to the full screen. That's 16. We're going to click. Now that's 18. So you can see it's a little bit wider for the 16. How much is that going to be useful for you? Again, that's for you to decide. And we're going to be comparing this from a practical standpoint and from a viewpoint of a landscape photographer. And mainly I'm doing landscape photography, so that's what I'm interested in. If you want to use it for other conclusions, for other types of photography, you might want to look at some other videos, but this is going to be specifically for landscape photography. So I went to my local regional park to set up this shot. It's nothing special. The weather wasn't too great. Some interesting clouds in the sky. Just as a note, for all the exposures, or for a lot of the exposures, the lighting is going to be a little bit uneven. I'm going to try not to use the lighting to judge whether I pick one versus the other. And I just want you to keep that in mind that, again, the lighting is going to be a little bit different. So let's escape from the full screen. Okay, so first we're going to start with the 18 millimeter end. I didn't compare 16 just because, again, the 18 to 55, widest is 18. So let's start with the 18 millimeters. And just as a note, for the 16 to 55, I wasn't able to get it exactly at 18 millimeters, so maybe the focal length is going to vary just a little bit between the two lenses, but it will be pretty close there. Also, I'm only going to be reviewing it for f8 and for f11. I actually did decide to do f4 and 5.6 in my tests, but again, when we're thinking about just landscape photography, a lot of times we're going to be shooting in that f8 and f11 range to get the maximum depth of field. So just keep that in mind. Again, this is a landscape photography based comparison. For the first comparison, the XF 16 to 55 is going to be on the left, and then we're going to have the 18 to 55 on the right. So you can see it's pretty much the same shot. The settings are going to be a little different. This was shot on a Fujifilm X-T30. We're going to see both of the apertures set to f8. You can see the 16 to 55 has a little bit of a different focal length there, and the shutter speed does vary just a little bit there just because I was shooting in aperture priority, but I think for this test it's close enough. It's going to give us a pretty good idea of what we're working with here. So first thing, I'm just going to do the center, and then I'll move to the left, and then I'll move to the right corner, and then maybe we'll do the left edge and the right edge for each of the photos. So kind of depending on what I'm feeling. So let's start with the center of the picture here. And again, this is 18 millimeters for f8. We're going to zoom in. We're at 100% here. And let's just move it around. So the first thing I'm going to look at is this little house here. So I'm going to actually pixel peep as close as I can here. And at f8, they actually look pretty similar. Maybe the 1855 looks a little bit darker, but like I mentioned, the fog or the clouds were moving and it was giving us some variable light there. So again, I'm pixel peeping. I'm going to say maybe the 1655 at the center. I look at these this wood here on the fencing or the bridge, and I'm seeing that the 1655 is just a little bit sharper. I don't think it's much sharper. I can't really say how much sharper, maybe a 5% increase in sharpness. But the 1855 isn't doing too bad here on f8. We're going to zoom back out. Let's take it to the left corner. And the left corner, we can see the 16 to 55 is a little bit sharper. There's just a little bit more contrast. Again, there's a little bit more brightness out there on the left corner. Let's switch it to the right corner. And I'm not really seeing too much difference. It's really hard to tell. Actually, maybe the right side of the 18 to 55 is just a little bit sharper there. So again, if you keep in mind, there are variations between lenses. Sometimes there can be decentering of lenses. I'm not a huge expert on decentering or how much that affects edge sharpness, but I can see that the 18 to 55 might be a little bit sharper on the right side here. Let's zoom out. Let's take a look at the right edge here. And we're looking at this tree and these branches and this darker tree here. And I'm going to say the 16 to 55 is definitely resolving a little bit more there. We've got a little bit of that Fujifilm watercolor effect here on the 18 to 55. It's not really that bad. Again, you've got to really be pixel peeping. If we zoom back out here, we actually can't see any difference. Well, maybe a little bit of a difference with a little bit more contrast on the 16 to 55. Let's take it maybe the top center here, and we're looking at this water area here, and I can see that the water does look a little bit sharper on the 16 to 55. So that's f8, 18 millimeters for both lenses. I think for this one I'm going to say the 16 to 55 does have the edge there. So again, the 18 to 55 on the right, 16 to 55 on the left here. Let's zoom in. F11. And again, we're going to take a look at that house. I'm looking real close here. And actually at F11, the house does look a little bit sharper on the 18 to 55. If I take a look here at the 16 to 55, honestly, again, it's a toss-up there. Could it be the lighting? Could it just be the contrast because of the lighting? I can't really tell, but they are very, very close there. So let's zoom back out. Let's go back to the left over here. The left edge. Let's see some of this grass here. And I'm looking, and it actually looks, again, very, very close there. Pull that back out to the edge. Yeah, I'm going to have to give it to the 16 to 55 again on the left edge. Let's zoom out again. Go back to the right edge here. This actually looks like a tie here for F11. It's really tough to tell. Maybe the 16 to 55 is a little bit sharper there. And we're going to go all the way to the right edge. Again, let's look at this tree here. Maybe even this little picnic area over here. A little closer. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's pretty much a wash there. So that looks pretty even on the right edge. Left edge, maybe the 16 to 55, but again, very even there. And again, we zoom in here to the center water area, and they're both looking really, really good there. Again, it's really hard to tell there. So that's f11 at 18 millimeters there. Okay, so let's move on to the 23 millimeter range. Again, it's not exact there, but it's as close as I could get it. So let's start with the center here. We're going to be at f8, 23 millimeters this time, or around that. The 18 to 55 this time is on the left, 16 to 55 is on the right. Let's zoom in. Center of the screen here at 23 millimeters. I'm going to say they're very close with maybe the 18 to 55, edging it out a little bit. Oh, it's so hard to tell. It's very close there. I'm going to have to call that almost a wash there. Let's zoom back out. Let's go back to the bottom left. And I'm going to have to give this to the 1855 here. Both of them are looking pretty good, though. Again, it's really hard to tell at 100%. Let's zoom out back to the right edge or the right corner. And the 1855 again is better there. Again, I don't know if it's my copy, but that's just what I'm seeing. Go back to that tree, maybe this wooden part of the bridge here. And I'm going to say the 16 to 55 is doing good there. It's doing better there. And let's zoom out. Left side. Gosh, it's so close on the left there. I'm going to give the edge to the 16 to 55. And again, let's go back to the center here. Center looks very close. Hard to tell there. Really hard to tell there. Okay, so let's go to f11 at 23 millimeters. Again, we've got the 18 to 55 on the left, 16 to 55 on the right. Zoom into the center. f11. Let's wait for that to load. Again, we're looking really close here at 100%. It's really tough to see a difference. Maybe I do like the 18 to 55 a little bit better, but gosh, they're so close, it's really hard to tell. Let's zoom back out, left corner. I'll give the left corner to the 16 to 55 on this one. Still, I'm going to go with 16 to 55 on this one here. And let's go with the right edge. Let's look at the tree again, this wood here. I'm going with the 16 to 55. Let's go with the left. And I'm going to say that's a tie on this side. And again, let's take a look. Actually, this time let's take a look at the top left corner there. And we're looking at this mound here. Again, this one looks like it's not evenly lit. It's really hard to tell there. So that's f11. Ooh, that's really close there. Again, the slight edge I would have to give to the 16 to 55, but again, it's really tough to tell. So let's move on. Okay, so we're now at f8 at 35 millimeters or somewhere about 35 millimeters. Let's zoom in. Again, I focused at the house here. Let's wait for it to load there. And I'm going to call this for 35 millimeters. 16 to 55 is sharper. But really, the 18 to 55 is not that bad. So center, they're both really, really good there with the 16 to 55 having the edge. Let's go to the bottom corner here. And we're looking here, kind of look at the shine there just to see how crisp it is. And gosh, I'm going to call that a tie on that left edge there, f8, 35 millimeters. Let's go to the right now. And we're looking at this wood here. 18 to 55, 16 to 55. I'm going to give the edge to the 16 to 55. And let's go here to the right edge. I'm going to go with 16 to 55 for the right edge. Let's zoom out again. Yeah, I'm going to go with 16 to 55 again. So let's try up here. Okay. You can actually see some cars in the distance. And I'm looking at the cars and they do look a little sharper and a little bit more contrasty with the 16 to 55. So just that little extra bit of quality for that 16 to 55. So again, that was f8, 35 millimeters. And now let's go to f11. Okay, so now f11, let's zoom in. And again, first we're going to look at the house here. And it's really tough to see a difference here. They're both looking really good. That house where I focus looks perfectly sharp on both sides. Let me remind you that I did keep all the default sharpening on. I didn't take any off. I didn't add any back. Basically, these photos are unedited straight from the camera. They're all RAWs, and they're changed to the Pro Via setting here on Capture One. So that's the center. Let's go back here, left side. And we're peeping this kind of shiny area here. I'm going to give that to the 18 to 55. Again, 35. Now we're on the right edge, or the right bottom corner. And I'll give that to the 16 to 55. Now right edge. Again, I'm going for the 16 to 55 for the right edge. And left edge. Let's check this little house here. Really tough call. Maybe the 18 to 55 actually looks a little bit more contrasty, so we'll give a little bit of that to the 18 to 55. And center. Again, let's check out some of these cars. It's almost a tie there. So that was f11, 35 millimeters. It's really tough to tell. You know, some parts, again, it could be the lens copy. And looking at the 18 to 55, it's holding its own, but it's not quite edging out the 16 to 55 here at 35 millimeters. And finally, let's go to 55 millimeters. I was looking at these earlier, and I did find that the 16 to 55 was definitely better on this end, but let's check it out again here. So let's try f8. Okay, so this time the 18 to 55 is on the left, 16 to 55 on the right. We're looking at this house here, the picnic house. Let's go back and forth. I'm going to have to give this one to the 1655. And let's go here, bottom left corner. Again, it's not evenly lit, but even without that, I can see that the 1655 is clearly better at the 55 millimeter range here. Let's go down to the bottom right. This bush here, again, lighting's a little uneven, but it's definitely a lot crisper regardless. And let's go to the right edge. Again, 16 to 55. I would say it blows it away on this one here. So we're going to see a lot of softness here on the 18 to 55 on the right edge. And the left edge, same thing. I can actually see that there's letters on the 16 to 55 on the left side. The right side, or sorry, on the left side of the 18 to 55, it just looks like mush. So it doesn't look like it's even resolving that at all. And let's go back to the center here. And again, I'm going to have to give that to the 1655. So I would say the clear winner for the 55 millimeter range is the XF 16 to 55 millimeter. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Again, is it a clear choice between the 1855 to the 1655? You can see from that kind of quick comparison, that rough comparison, that it really is hard to tell. I know the comparison really wasn't scientific, but again, it was just to give me a rough idea to see which one I want to keep, or if I want to keep both and sell one. Really, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong either way. I would say if you're pixel peeping, or if you're kind of on the edge of one or the other, you're probably going to want to go with the 16 to 55 because it does provide that little extra bit of sharpness. Maybe not in every single focal length, but overall, I would say that it is edging out the 18 to 55. Again, landscape photography, you're shooting f8, f11. For those aperture settings, I would say you're going to be pretty close there. So, which one is going to be worth it for you? That's for you to decide. f2.8, it's constant aperture on the 16 to 55. You also have to consider the 1855. Constant aperture is not there. It's going to be a variable aperture. Some of the pros of the 18 to 55, it's lightweight. It's got pretty good sharpness. It's got the OIS, or the optical image stabilization. Those might be big if you're doing video and landscape photography, so that's something to consider. For the 16 to 55, the pros, again, it's going to edge you out for the sharpness. You've got that consistent 2.8. But one of the big cons is that it's pretty heavy. So if you're doing a lot of hiking or in landscape photography, even just walking from location to location, it might be a little bit too heavy or heavier than you want to carry. When you think about Fujifilm, sometimes you think about lightweight and being able to save weight. And the 1655, I mean, it's not a beast like some of the full frame cameras, but it can be a little bit heavier. So if you're thinking about weight, I don't think you can go wrong with the 18 to 55. Again, I think they are pretty close in sharpness. If you have perfect conditions with a great sunset or somewhere really beautiful like Yosemite National Park, I think you would be hard-pressed to tell the difference between the two. As long as your composition is good, as long as the light is good, it's going to be really tough to tell unless you're really pixel peeping. Now for print, is it going to matter? I don't print a lot. Most of my things go on the web. Sometimes I do print on occasion, just for family and friends. But for print, I think it might be just a hair better. The 1655 might be just a hair better. So I hope that helps you in your decision. I know this is probably not going to be the only video that you watch, but I hope it was helpful in your decision to get one versus the other. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.